Every single stitch I put into that quilt was filled with love. Love for a little boy I hadn't even met yet. My name is Margaret, but everyone who matters calls me Nana. At 68 years old, after losing my husband 5 years earlier, my days had grown quiet, too quiet. My only daughter, Emily, had moved to the city, married a successful man named John, and built a life that looked perfect from the outside. Big house, shiny cars, everything new. When she called me that bright spring morning and said, "Mom, we're pregnant. You're going to be a grandma," my whole world lit up again. A baby, my first grandbaby, a little boy they later named Lucas. I cried right there on the phone, holding the receiver like it was the most precious thing I'd ever touched. I wanted to give him something no store could ever sell, something that carried me with him every single night. So I decided to make him a quilt. Not just any quilt, a special one. For 3 long months, I sat at my old sewing table every evening, the lamp glowing soft and warm. I chose the softest flannel in gentle blues and whites, stitched with tiny silver stars and moons. I cut pieces from my wedding dress, from Emily's baby blanket, even a scrap from my own mother's favorite apron. Each square held a memory. I embroidered his name in delicate gold thread, Lucas, wrapped in Nana's love forever. I added a wise little owl for wisdom, a gentle bear for strength, and in the corner I stitched tiny secret messages only he would one day read. "You are loved beyond measure. Dream big, little one." Tears slipped down my cheeks as I worked. I imagined wrapping him up tight, keeping him safe and warm, letting him feel my arms even when I couldn't be there. When the quilt was finally finished, I folded it with trembling hands and tied it with a simple red bow. The day of the baby shower, Emily looked radiant. I handed her the gift, and when she opened it, her eyes widened. "Mom, it's beautiful," she whispered, pulling me into a tight hug. John even smiled and said, "This is really thoughtful, Margaret." Everyone gathered around, touching the soft fabric, telling me how lucky Lucas was. I felt so proud, so full of joy. My heart was stitched right into every inch of that quilt. But what I didn't know that day, what I couldn't possibly imagine, was that this quilt, this piece of my soul, would soon be thrown away like yesterday's trash, and the person who let it happen would be my own daughter. I had opened a small savings account for the baby right after she told me she was pregnant. I put in every extra penny I had. When I checked the balance online, most of the money was gone. Transfers to her personal account, luxury baby clothes, a fancy crib, designer nursery decor. She had been taking what she wanted and telling me the account was for emergencies only. I sat in the dark staring at the screen until the numbers blurred. My own daughter had used me for years, my time, my money, my heart, while quietly ashamed of where she came from. She wanted the perfect life with her husband's wealthy family, and I was the embarrassing leftover she couldn't wait to hide. That night, I didn't cry anymore. Something inside me shifted. The pain was still there, raw and deep, but beneath it rose a quiet, steel-cold strength I had never felt before. I was done being the mother who gave everything and received disrespect in return. I called a financial advisor the next morning. I quietly froze the remaining account. I started keeping records of every conversation, every transfer. I was no longer hurt. I was awake. Lucas arrived healthy and perfect, with the biggest, curious eyes. I drove the long miles to their house as often as I could. I rocked him when he cried, cooked meals for Emily, cleaned up after their busy days, and gave them date nights they said they desperately needed. Every time I tucked him in, I'd ask softly, "Where's Nana's quilt, sweetheart?" Emily would smile and say it was right there in the nursery. Until one ordinary autumn afternoon, when I walked in carrying fresh-baked cookies. Lucas was fussing in his crib. I reached for the quilt to cover him and froze. Instead of my handmade treasure, there was a plain, sleek, store-bought blanket, all sharp lines and modern gray. "Emily," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "where's the quilt I made for Lucas?" She paused at the stove, stirring pasta, and didn't look at me. "Oh, Mom, we got rid of it." The words landed like a stone in my chest. "Got rid of it?" She sighed. "When we redecorated the nursery last month, John said it didn't match the new furniture. It looked old-fashioned. He tossed it while I was at work. I came home and it was already gone. I didn't want to fight about it, Mom. It's just a blanket." Just a blanket? My hands started to shake. The room tilted. That quilt wasn't fabric. It was months of my love, my late nights, my tears, pieces of our family story. And she had let him throw it away. She hadn't even tried to save it. I sat down hard on the couch, tears burning hot behind my eyes. "Emily, I poured everything I had into that quilt. For your son, for my grandbaby. How could you let that happen?" She shrugged, a little defensive now. "Mom, you're being too sensitive. We have plenty of other blankets. John works hard. He wants the house to look nice. It's not a big deal." Not a big deal. I drove home in silence, the road blurry with tears that wouldn't stop. That night, I sat alone in my small living room, the sewing machine quiet for the first time in months. I thought about every sacrifice I had made for Emily, working 2 jobs after her father left, giving up my own dreams so she could chase hers, always showing up no matter how tired I was. And this was how she valued me? By letting my greatest gift be tossed out without a fight? The pain cut so deep I could barely breathe. I felt shattered, invisible, worthless. For days, I couldn't eat. I stared at old photos of us and wondered where my little girl had gone, the one who used to crawl into my lap and say, "I love you, Mommy." But as the tears finally dried, something quiet and strong began to rise inside me. I looked at myself in the mirror one morning and whispered, "Margaret, you deserve better than this. You have given enough." I realized I couldn't keep pouring love into hands that would simply throw it away. For the first time in my life, I chose to protect my own heart. I never yelled. I never made a scene. That's not who I am. But everything changed. When Emily called the next week asking me to babysit so she and John could go to a fancy work party, I answered softly, "I'm sorry, dear. I already have plans." She sounded surprised, but I held my ground. Then came the money requests. "Mom, Lucas needs new things and we're a little short this month." I replied with the same calm voice. "I wish I could help, but my savings are for my own peace now." Slowly, their perfect world started showing tiny cracks. John worked longer hours. Lucas grew fussier without my familiar routines. Emily sounded tired and short on the phone. Still, I didn't rush in to rescue them. Instead, I joined a quilting circle with other grandmothers in town. We sat together, laughing and sewing blankets for children at the local shelter. For the first time in years, strangers hugged me with tears in their eyes and said, "Thank you, this means the world." I felt seen. I felt valued. The real moment came on Lucas's first birthday. They threw a big party, balloons, a fancy cake, all the relatives. I arrived with only a simple store-bought toy. Emily pulled me into the kitchen, looking confused. "Mom, where's the special present? I thought you'd make something beautiful like always." I looked straight into her eyes, my heart steady and quiet. "Like the quilt I made? The one you let get thrown away?" Her face went pale. "Mom, I said I was sorry about that." I smiled gently, sadly. "Sorry doesn't bring it back, Emily. That quilt was my love stitched into every thread. You let it be discarded because it didn't match. And in that moment, I finally understood. If my love could be thrown away so easily, I had to stop offering it so freely. I've forgiven you, but I've also chosen myself. Tears filled her eyes. Please, Mom, I need you. Lucas needs you. We all do. I hugged her one last time. I will always love you, sweetheart. But love isn't a one-way street. I hope one day you understand the value of what you threw away. I left the party early and drove home under a sky full of stars. That night, I finished a new quilt, Soft's pink this time, for a little girl at the shelter who had no one. As I tied the final knot, a deep, beautiful peace settled over me like the warmest blanket I'd ever made. Emily and I still talk sometimes. She's more thoughtful now, but the real victory isn't in her change, it's in mine. I've learned that the greatest revenge isn't anger or shouting. It's choosing yourself, finding your own joy, and letting the people who hurt you feel the quiet absence of the love they once took for granted. Family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about the love we choose to cherish every single day. So if you've ever felt discarded by someone you loved with all your heart, wrap yourself in your own quilt of self-respect. Hold your head high and live beautifully, because your worth was never theirs to throw away.